of the Community Mental Health of Ottawa County Finance Committee to order. First order of business, please note the mission and vision statements as written on your agenda. And next, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda for today.
So moved.
Moved and supported. Any discussion on the agenda? All right, then all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And we have one consent item, which is attached to the agenda, and it's the minutes from our February 23, which was our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any discussion on the minutes from February 23, 2020? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Thank you. That motion carries as well. We have a presentation on Medicaid spend down and impact to general fund dollars. And I see Olivia over there getting ready to go. And Dr. Brashears.
Let me introduce the topic for you and the public. One of the things since COVID that's come back is Medicaid spend downs. And if you don't remember what those are, they're like Medicaid co-payments before you actually get to have the entitlement benefit. Now, during COVID, those were like suspended. And so for the last couple of years, they've been back. And what is happening with also the changes in the increase in complexity of people remaining on Medicaid, even if you're disabled, aged, and blind, even if you're in the most things, has been more and more difficult. And what happens is people are not meeting their spend downs in some cases until much later or at all, which means all of their expenditures gets turned into state general fund dollars. And remember, we get $4.5 million of general fund versus 53 to 6 million Medicaid. So if someone doesn't meet their spend down, then that's going to get costed to general fund. The other thing to keep in mind, if someone doesn't meet their spend down, they technically don't have the Medicaid entitlement. So maybe even though we've authorized all of these services, residential, this, that, whatever, if they don't meet their spend down, then technically they don't have that benefit. Now, most of the time we just say, okay, we'll move it to general fund. But if the problem continues to grow, the hit to general fund is going to be so large that our ability not to look at what that benefit is kind of narrows and goes down. So this presentation is showing you how we're monitoring this. This is us showing you our due diligence, that we're aware of this issue, we're tracking it, we're working with our partners that approve Medicaid. We have a liaison that works with us all the time to help deal with this issue, because community mental health does not authorize Medicaid. We can't get anybody on it. We can only point to the right direction. This could be, and you'll see, if everybody does not meet their Medicaid spend down, this could be $1 million annual expense to general fund to us. And so we have to keep track of, we can't spend 25 to 30% of our general fund dollars on this issue. So we've put together a way of monitoring this, as we've beefed up things we've had in the past. But I'd have Olivia, and you know Olivia, she comes in with the to show you how we're monitoring it. So the intent of the discussion is to show you how we're monitoring it and let you know we're aware of the situation. We're working with all parties to ensure that people meet their spend downs. But this is something we're looking at closely. So Olivia, if you could just walk through a couple of the things they have to show the board and the public. It's in your pack.
We've been monitoring spend down for a long time, but since we went live with our new system in June 2025, something I did was create an updated dashboard to take a look at this, and continuing to add different elements to it to kind of dive deeper. So this is the updated dashboard. what I'm gonna do is walk through the dashboard itself, but then I'm gonna go a little bit out of order and I'm gonna end on the general fund tab since that's kind of the topic of the discussion today. So this is the about page and you don't have to worry about reading it because I'll explain everything. But I'm gonna go first to the overview page and sometimes it takes a minute to run. So this is just giving you a brief overview of spend down and its status. So starting at the bottom, we can just see the number of people on spend down per month. And then the status of if they met it versus they did not meet it. Moving on to the upper hand, right-hand corner, there's this pie graph here. This shows you basically the amount of total dollars that we've paid out, regardless of the fund source, which is broken down by consumers who have met their spend down versus have not. And for all of these, you can filter it. For example, if I just want to take a look at the current fiscal year, the dollar amounts change for each of these. And then in this left-hand corner, this is something that we call priority review, because part of the policy for spend down is it has a 90-day look back period where you can retroactivate someone's Medicaid, basically, kind of help with billing and things like that. So we have a 3-tiered priority review where the month that's going to kind of fall off that retroactivation is priority number 1, which in this case would be December. And then January is priority 2, February is priority 3. And what you don't see here, because I had to remove them because they have protected health information, are 2 additional tabs that drill down into each consumer and do a monthly consumer level view that you're able to filter by department, by review versus not review and such things. This is where I'm going to kind of skip out of order. I'm going to skip the general fund tab and go right to our quarterly summary. So we review this each month at the UM committee, but then each quarter we do a deeper dive into what has happened the previous quarter. And so this is looking at that kind of more in-depth financial quarterly summary. And all of these are interactive. So I can expand these for each quarter and I can see by population how many distinct consumers were active in that quarter, as well as the different like total amounts paid, as well as the different costing buckets. And again, right now I have it just filtered to these 2 quarters, but I could filter it to anything that I wanted. And then again, the last kind of page before we jump to general fund, this is just looking at basically a historic viewpoint of the total consumers on spend down by month from 2016 to last month. And it's just because this doesn't extend all the way back because this is when our new system started and it's much more accurate in monitoring spend down and dealing with spend down. So I only included from when the new system started. And so now the bulk of our discussion is on general fund. So here is a breakdown specifically of general fund. I'll just kind of walk you through what some of these things mean. Starting with this table up here in the right-hand corner. So potential GF is basically the sum of each individual deductible for that month. So that's what potentially we could be paying out of general fund, either broken down by month or by fiscal year. So if we
And
want
what
to
is that number? Because you can't really see it from here. There you go.
So then if we look at just fiscal year 2026, our potential GF so far, because we're not all the way through the fiscal year, obviously, is over 601,000. So moving on here, this is where we get into what we've paid out so far. So we have different costing buckets for general fund. We have just general fund itself, but then we also have a CCBHC general fund, which is basically CCBHC consumers and we're paying general fund for them. So that's broken down by those 2 costing buckets, but really they're all general fund. So this column represents all the general fund itself. And percent of potential GF used, that is basically what we've paid out of the potential of what we could. And that's what this number here is. Total GF utilization. So for fiscal year 2026, we're only utilizing 63% so far of what we could be paying out of general fund.
I like how she put that. I say, we're spending 63% on GF and we shouldn't be, but she's correct.
And then, yeah, we just have distinct consumers. So if we go down here, going to unfilter this. we have it broken down by month. And then we also have a graph here that shows you the potential GF compared to what we have paid out in those two different costing buckets. And as a lot of you probably noticed, we have 1 month that is above the potential, which theoretically should not happen because once they hit their deductible, they should switch to Medicaid. So I sent everybody who continued using GF after they met their deductible to our fiscal department, and they are looking into it just to see what happened and if there's anything that can be done about that. For example, this in February, it was last week I looked at it, we were utilizing 101% of what we could be, and that's just because the switch at the state level hadn't registered yet.
Right.
So basically, we register that, yes, they met their spend down, and then that has to be sent to the state, they process it, and then they let us know that, yes, they're technically active in the case. So, so yeah, that is kind of just a brief overview of this current dashboard and what it is currently.
Yeah, you know, and the point is, we've always had in our history this spend down issue and hitting general fund. We need general fund for other unfunded mandates. And this right here, if it gets past a certain percentage, and to me, anything over 25% is in which, good luck, right? Where we're at now is really where we need to be. And the other question is, do we have clients, and we know who they are, that never meet their spend down, like ever? And if so, we're going to have to say, well, what are they getting? Are they entitled to it? Do they need it? If they need it, obviously, we continue to provide the service, but they technically don't have a benefit. So we're not talking about people that fall on and off of Medicaid, but people that never seem to meet their deductible ever. And ever for me is like 6 months or more. We got to look into them every quarter, but look into them to ask the questions. Is something going on with how billing is hitting and all of those things? And luckily that's not like 100 people or anything, but it's the only way to start to move the needle on this, because we can't offer the Medicaid benefit for people that are not on Medicaid. It's too expensive. And so we have to work with the state to understand this. And it's like everybody forgot because of COVID. Okay, I mean, Anna, you've been here a while. We monitor this forever, spend downs. But there was a period of time where it's kind of like, don't worry about that. And there's actually people that work at the state don't even know what I'm talking about when it comes to spend downs. And they're running the thing. It's not their fault. They just never had. We have literally staff that never have lived through spend downs before. Like, wow, we have to monitor that because they're newer. But I wanted to ensure the finance committee, the board, and the public were watching this closely, because you look at that annual risk. To me, that's a risk factor of close to $1 million when you annualize it. That could go to general fund, is made to go to other things that Medicaid doesn't pay for, fill in the gaps, pay for hospitalization. May even be used for pay for residential costs that Medicaid don't pay. General fund can be used for that. What it can't be, what I don't want to maximize to, is this issue. And with the new law passed at the federal level, we're anticipating more stringent criteria for Medicaid eligibility coming up. And so we want to be out front watching this. How many people have fallen off? How much is that costing us? What are the services? So we wanted to show you our latest kind of monitoring tool. We have committees that meet on this monthly. Staff look at it individually. It's a robust, comprehensive process. And we're trying to keep as much as our general fund as we can to use in other areas. So that's kind of why so we'll take any questions that you may have. And if it's technical, I'll tell Olivia.
Well, what could you do if it's out of control?
If it gets out of control, then that's when we start talking to the department about, are we allowed to cap the benefit for folks that can't meet their spend down? And if it's medically necessary, the answer is no, by the way. Our admission criteria and the access standard says, regardless of funding sources, you shall provide the level of care needed. So gathering the impact, getting our partners together saying, we need more general fund. Now, the hope would be that, say, CCBHC may help this. It doesn't, because if you're not on Medicaid, there's no extra payment for you on top of that. So the GF component of that's very difficult. It's offering our benefits, but no payment on top of it. So it's monitoring, collecting the information, and looking at the impact on your total percent of GF, and then advocating for more GF, which we did 15 years ago. And we were successful in getting more GF allocated to us.
So the intervention is beyond our internal.
At first it's here, then it moves up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what would be the reasons people wouldn't be meeting their spend down?
There could be a billing glitch. That's one way. Like there was a service, but it wasn't charged yet into the system,
Oh.
right? It could be that the services that they get are not, they could have a very large deductible. They're not all the same. Some people have very large deductibles before Medicaid comes in. So it's making sure that the services are delivered and it's billed correctly. People falling off Medicaid is just due to re-enrollment, but really this is more the relationship between the services delivered, the cost of those, and them being billed correctly. And if someone no-shows for several appointments, they don't meet their spend down. So compliance to treatment. Now in a residential setting, sometimes this happens, but it's kind of fixable. Like, all right, just bill all the time down. It's really the non-residential service. We look at residential, we actually have percentage of residential people not meeting spend down because that's an easier fix. But other services, it could be attendance, billing, all of those processes have to align or you could miss your spend down.
Question, can you break down this data by diagnosis? So someone with mild to moderate population, what would that look like versus someone who's IDD in specialized residential? See what the numbers would show.
Good.
It might be interesting to
We
see
probably
how-
use primary diagnosis.
Yeah. The other question I have is, as you and Ann are well aware, I'm aware of a consumer who was receiving Medicaid services for 26 years without a spend down. And all of a sudden, the state in their wisdom after COVID decided to reclassify her as subject to a spend down. And the question is, well, what's the change? What, you know,
Right.
and the answer is, well, we miscategorized that individual 26 years ago. So it's a tacit admission of incompetence to start with. The fact that they, if it's true, mischaracterized someone in a silo 26 years ago and didn't catch it. But it begs the question, does the state have another ulterior motive? Are they intentionally trying to push people onto a spend down who should not be on one? And how do we address that as an agency? Do we just sit back and say, oh, well, that's.
Well, I'll tell you, Tom, I wish that was the case because we do something about that.
Yeah.
I think it's more complex. People are not paying attention. Errors happen. That's what I'm thinking is most likely the issue. I don't think there is a plan to somehow change it on purpose because you try to ask questions about this anywhere. Everybody's, well, I think it's this. I think it's that. I think it's this. I know the new rules this. And I'll tell you, the job I probably would not want in the state of Michigan is determining who the heck is on Medicaid and which Medicaid they get. It's got to be one of the most stressful jobs you could ever imagine. And so I have to think it's just confusion, complexity, education. And those that have the best advocates even have the hardest time navigating to. You can know the issue. But for us, we're primarily funded by Medicaid. So we have to stay on top of all of these variables. And, you know, regionally, we're not looking at the same data set. We hope to have the same data regionally, see how we compare apples to apples. But I'll tell you, this CMH is on it and we are looking at it to the penny because we have to know the impact to us. And what I worry about is that people with high cost services, that there's some glitch in the system. We're using general fund to pay for them and we shouldn't have to. It's an entitlement. But you know, you don't pay the premium, I guess you don't get the entitlement. It's different than regular insurance, but in this regard, similar. I wish it was some plan to, I just think it's complexity and confusion and competence.
Especially when you challenge it and you get three different answers.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Right. So that's why we wanted to bring it to the committee's attention that we're looking at this. This will come up periodically. Maybe we'll bring it up quarterly to show you how we're doing as a committee. I just thought of that. So Olivia, maybe quarterly we'll come back and say, here's how we did it. Some things we're going to do monthly, but quarterly, unless you want it more frequent.
I don't know how the rest of you feel, but it seems like quarterly would be fine unless there were some drastic things that were happening that you felt we needed to know before the quarter.
Or that we give you better hand on. Rather than not.
That sounds great. Thank you, Olivia and Dr. Bashirs, for your work.
Thanks, Olivia.
Then we're moving on to number 6 on the agenda, standing updates, the CCBHC oversight. That's our attachment B. And Dr. Bashirs.
Yeah, and I'll let Chelsea and Anna go through this. Part of our oversight of that is we have our CCBHC dashboard.
You
I'm
didn't
over
just
it.
see my iPhone.
I got it. Can you throw
I
it?
can
up?
help.
Yeah. I'll go through the dashboard. I'm turning red because I think you guys might be doing some of
Yeah,
the
we're.
other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
The dash.
no, I got it. Yeah, we got it. So one of, sorry about that. I'm just about as red as you are. One of the things we're monitoring all the time is CCBHC activity. Now Diane, our new fiscal manager, say hi to Diane, everybody. Okay, we'll introduce you formally. Is getting a crash course in this as well, but we're looking at the number of required encounters we need to meet our targets for both revenue projections, the amount of encounters we have, and we have that broken out by directly operated staff and DCOs, or our contract organizations that provide CCBHC. And so what this is doing is that we look at this all the time, is we also set a target. And I think that if you go to the next, I think it's the next page with the target, I set it really high. Okay. So if you understand what we're trying to do here, the middle is, see where it says annual goal 40,000? I think I sat in office with you and I said, it's 40,000. In our budget, it's around 27,000 encounters we're looking for. So I'm trying to shoot for double that for our revenue side of things. So when you first look at this dashboard, you realize 20%. That's just because we have the Brashears Mason-Dixon line at 40,000 encounters to bring in extra revenue. But this is, again, to show you the tools we're going to be monitoring monthly. And we'll adjust this to the actual budget next time. But I wanted it to be where I want the ideal to be. I want staff to understand where the target is ultimately, to bring in as much revenue as you can with CCBHC. And so when you first look at this chart, you go, oh boy. But remember, because that red line is up quite a bit, we'll lower it down. But we're constantly monitoring. We can do this, I guess, anytime we want, Olivia, like any day, we could have real-time data of where we are related to this dashboard. See, I'm not as red anymore, so it's not on the screen. Oh, yeah, I still am. So that's kind of what we're looking at with that. That's what that line is. And I think we have it twice in a row on the packet, 2 different views. We have it kind of by weeks, and then we have it by, is that quarters and months? Months. And so we're monitoring it that way. But the idea, what you don't have in here, is that we have individual targets. We're all directly operated staff. We can tell how much our DCOs are doing, our contract agencies are doing, where they're at. And remember, we have to do 51% of all of these encounters has to be directly operated by CMH. So if all of the services that are eligible, and you have a whole bunch of contract providers, and they do more than 51%, that's not considered CCBHC certified or in the model. The idea is the CCBHC is providing the majority of the encounters. This is why Network 180 is adding 90 employees. They contract out everything, they're a CCBHC. They had to build up a directly operated base of services, so they're not in violation of 51%.
Which does not include any of our crisis contacts. So the 24/7 crisis services we operate, they don't get counted in the 51%. We can still get this T1040 payment for those services. But when we're looking at that specific 51%, it's that balancing act to make sure that every service outside of crisis is.
And we're looking to add 3 more DPOs on board. Encounter sharing.
Yeah, and so for this part of the presentation for this month, and I'm sorry, I had you guys down for millage. That's where I got all screwed up. Okay, they do some.
This,
Right.
we know this.
Is you know, we ended up with a surplus in CCBHC last year, right? And the new manual just came out, and I actually have a summary of risk. I might have sent out to you all already. If not, I'll send it again. That shows in the new kind of manual, it states very explicitly that the CCBHC carries the full risk of over expenditures. So that has not changed. They finally put it in a very specific statement where before it wasn't in there. And so I've done an analysis of risk for CCBHC, and I think with these tools, we're able to monitor it very closely. Remember, we put in our PCE, auto. That's our new thing. When we put in the new system, because we really didn't have a good way to track any of this before. When we started CCBHC, and people were literally in fiscal services using sundials to figure out stuff because we didn't have anything that automated this. But we wanted to show you once again, one of our due diligence for this committee is showing you how we monitor these things. And so you get a sense of it. So you don't have to question, like, are they paying attention? I haven't heard anything about that. It's to trust your team that we're constantly doing this. And we'll get the next report. We'll have what the actual budget says, and we'll probably say where I am at with the 40,000. But I really wanted to say, let's try to maximize what we think is possible on this. And so that's the tool we're using to help us. And there's drill down reports. We can look at individual teams. We can look at individual providers, who's performing well, who's not. It's been quite a heavy lift, and the staff's done a really good job. That's why I wanted them to present to, because they've been running this with other folks.
And we meet regularly with
Yeah.
our staff to look at this data. So I think I've had this report up twice today already, and
Right.
last week multiple times, talking with the directors of the different departments to really focus on how can we maximize this work that we're doing and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the people that we serve, but also getting these encounters up. And it does, I think, help people to see this lofty goal of 40,000 because you want to extend to it. It is a little scary,
I
but
know.
I think it's good, right? It makes you try to stretch up. So we really use this a lot to help guide those.
And you've done a really good job also helping us with Olivia and some other folks, our productivity system.
Mhm.
And getting to that where it's at. Is it even possible to reach the goal with schedules and no-show rates and face-to-face expectations? So we've had to revamp our entire productivity suite that we're ready to. We'll probably show the PQI committee first and then show you what we're going to do. We'll show that. And that has a nice tie-in to our directly operated and non-directly operated, productivity rates. So when we talk about caseload, we're like, well, let's talk about that. Where are we with this? And so I've been very happy with all of the movements in the last 45 days in these areas. Staff's been working hard.
Question, Michael, is my recollection was a year or so ago when we first started trying to understand CCBHC, that we were told that if we generated an operational profit, we got to keep those profits. If we generated a loss, we had to absorb those losses. But now we're finding out, correct me if I'm wrong, if we generated on paper $200,000 worth of profit for the CCBHC, we don't actually get to keep that. They wind up adjusting our reimbursement rates the next year to take it back.
If you don't reinvest the profit into the CCBHC.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a little better than you're suggesting. We have to take that money and we got to reinvest it, meaning grow it or they'll lower our rate because they said you don't need it. The thing is, we're finding you're supposed to break even every year. Well, it's a really fancy dancy way to do cost settlement. I just wish they'd say cost settlement instead. But yes, there's not as much freedom with extra revenue. We get to keep some of it, use it, some of the local, but most of it has to be reinvested right back in it, or you don't raise expenditures up. They lower the amount of your rate for the on top revenue.
Now, we had the problem where our DCOs were saying, if someone is a no-show, we can't bill the CCBHC. So we are at risk. And we made some rate adjustments to help
We did.
cover their risk, which increased our costs. So presumably that will help moderate this.
It will. On the DCO side, it will. Remember, the contract people don't get paid unless the service happens. However, what we're finding is the administrative burden to be part of a DCO. We've had to increase the rate because there's double duplication of paperwork and all kinds of stuff that goes into it, but it does offset some of that dynamic you're saying. In some cases, it works better if we directly operate. Some cases, it works better if we have a contract provider. That's why you want a healthy balance. I'd love to be at, like, I don't know, 55 to whatever, or 60 to 40. But the thing is, if we overextend with contracts, with contract agencies, we could quickly turn that 51% upside down. We have some provider that do thousands of encounters, and you go, oh my gosh, all that money if you just, right? Well, that happens. The next thing you know, you're sitting at 47% and the whole thing is in jeopardy. So you have to grow very slowly. And luckily, we've had that strategy of growing very slowly. We've even used millage dollars to set up people to become DCOs before we do that. And then the growth is contained because you don't want to grow too quickly, or you could be in jeopardy of not being upside down in that. The idea from the federal government was this is pretty much should be directly operated by, most states don't have a CMH system like ours. So this creates a system like ours, like say in Mississippi or in other states. They're happy to directly operate it because they have none of this, none of these services. They have different waiver services than we have. So you had a question, I thought.
Just, what creates such differences in like the number of visits per month or per week? Is it?
Oh, yeah, you're
Those
looking
are
at,
holidays. If you look, when it drops really low, it's
And we had
11/26, so
terrible
it's,
weather too in
yeah,
January.
so you've got, that's the week of Thanksgiving, we're only open 3 days. And then you have Christmas week, it dropped way down to 200. New Year's week, it still dropped down. So that plays into it. And then I think, like Chelsea said,
Bad
the
weather.
weather. Also, when you get to January, February, we still have billing coming in.
Oh, okay.
So, you know,
Sure.
some of that is delayed. So this
Sure.
really is a living dashboard. I know
Mhm.
Olivia has to refresh it for us, but it does change pretty regularly depending on how frequently the billing is getting submitted for those things. And we've also set up reports to catch documents that aren't signed.
That's right.
I think, did IBH go over
Mhm.
that, those reports here? So Dr. Bashir has worked closely with IBH to have some other monitoring reports put in place to help our staff monitor that we're kind of closing the loop on things. There's a lot of paperwork and sometimes things get forgotten.
yeah, if
So
you don't
those-
sign a
those
document, you
people
can't get
that
the payment.
finish it,
Right.
yeah.
So we had missing documents up the kazoo. So we figured out where they were and let's get going. Some of it was just an issue in the system, like it was preventing a document. But the amount of work it takes to continuously monitor this stuff is a heavy lift. And I just want to assure the public and the board we're doing it. And these are the tools we're using to do it. It's our job, yeah, but you can have questions like, well, how am I making sure? Seems like these are all these plates on a stick, 8 million of them. It's the development of these tools and the staff evaluating them and having action plans is making the difference. It's moving the needle on these things.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, unless there are any other questions, we'll move on to the authority transition update. For sure.
Yeah, a couple of things. You have a handout that was hand delivered. It will be sent out in the future, so the public has this. I walked it in, sorry. So a couple of things are happening with transition, right? We've had some initial meetings. Ann and I met with the department heads of the county administrator, deputy county. We went over kind of like the essential principles we're going to use for the transition and a little bit of a timeline. I've thus put together this timeline, and I just want to narratively go where things are at. A couple of principles that we've established in the transition. One, no Medicaid dollars will be used for authority transition costs, meaning costs between now and when we come in authority will have to be absorbed by reductions in county cost allocation to us or other local fund sources as defined. We can't put the cost of the transition on the backs of the Medicaid recipients. And that was a principle that has been endorsed. As you can imagine, we're still trying to figure out the nuances of that. As you know from my last update, I want to hire a CFO immediately. We have the legal contract up for this board. And so funding for that's either existing vacancy dollars on one side or another funding source that we're still working on, okay, how we're going to actually do it. But I wanted you to understand that the principle was that the cost of the transition would not be put in the Medicaid budget. Of course, next year, if they're legitimate Medicaid expenditures, we'll absorb them into our budget, but we'll see a corresponding decrease in administrative cost allocation from the county. So that was a pivotal kind of decision point. And I also remember county commissioners were told that several times in public hearings. So I thought I'd have that principle in writing and endorsed. The other thing is we have a general timeline. We have county department heads identified with each of the functions that we have to transition. We have CMH leadership and assistants. So Anna and I are going to take the lead with department heads, but we have the whole leadership team assigned to different aspects of the transition to work with Anna and I. So we're not bearing the weight alone, and our leadership team gets some expertise in some of the ins and outs of transition related to HR and IT and contracts and those things. And so I've had to revamp kind of our initial plan with that because the county assigned all department heads. So Ann and I are like, well, you better be the lead with help in there. And so for this week, we're kind of, the county department heads are identifying functions that cannot continue under contract with CMH after 10/1, meaning they know for a fact you're going to have to stand this up. So things like our fiscal services accounting system, we know that's going to have to be different. So we're going to have to move on. We can't use the counties. So we're going to have to move on something like that quicker. So we have each department identifying those this week. CMH leadership determines which functions must be stood up from independent from the county. Do we want HR stood up independently? Do we want a hybrid? Now, the overall plan is to use as much as the county resources as we can, as long as we can, unless it's cost prohibitive or you really can't function in a hybrid role. You take something like HR. I don't know if I want the county HR department doing investigations on CMH authority staff if they're not actually county employees. I'd rather have our own or another third party. I don't know if the county wants the county HR staff to be doing investigation on authority staff as a governmental department. So it's making these key decisions. You got some spring break stuff in there, but I'm saying by April 18th, we would have completed all of our individual meetings in that week anyways, of department heads and CMH leads. And by May 1st, we'll have kind of an initial comprehensive plan to share with the board commissioners of what's being stood up, what's not being stood up, all costs associated. So that's a general outline of where we're going. There's a lot of moving parts to this. We have today I got something in the email. I don't know if you got copied on it. I did late this afternoon. Oh, the IT director's already identified a whole bunch of stuff. Well, we haven't even had the meeting yet, but I'm glad they're doing it. The county is taking this seriously and with a spirit of cooperation and with the tenor of we are not going to hang CMH out to dry. I've been impressed with the meetings that we've had of all right, we're not sure yet, but we're going to find out. We're going to make sure that this department is okay in transition. I haven't had any opposition, any negativity, anything, besides good luck, when you're done. And so this gives you a general sense of where we are. And I would say by May, we're going to have a real concrete, this is what's happening, this is what's not happening, with or everything connected to it. We've run into a couple of things with spring break, but other than that, we should be good to go. Any questions on transition related to this or any other question related to it? Okay.
I do have,
Mhm.
is there any PR being done in regards for the transition to that?
Well, we'll develop a staff and communication plan. We had to get the initial oomph up and structured, and now we're ready to talk about how we start communicating it. We had to figure out who's going to be assigned at the county level, what the rules of engagement were going to be, and the principles, and we've done that.
Okay.
So we have identified, Chelsea's our person, by the way, to help us with communication with that. We just haven't had anything tangible to communicate.
Good.
We'll start doing that. The reason why that's important is that we have to demystify the relationship between authority and millage.
Yep.
So I'm quite aware of it. Do you still need a millage if you're an authority, right? And even though there's no impact and all that stuff, that is on our radar as a major thing to
I'm
do.
glad y'all-
Yeah, me too. I'll do one part of it.
All right, thank you, Dr. DeFeers. And then, speaking of the millage, and Anna and Chelsea are going to give us a little update. We've got a couple of attachments to look at, see through that.
So we wanted to share with you some documents that Chelsea's been working hard to get put together as we prepare for the millage renewal and restoration question that will be, the resolution will be going, we hope, before the Board of Commissioners at their April meeting, but we are attending a work session tomorrow to give some background information on what we're asking for and what has been going on with the millage for the last year. So this is I would say a very final draft, but we plan on, if there's any changes that come out of today's meeting or out of meeting with the Board of Commissioners at the work session tomorrow, we'll update these before we actually go out to print. We want to make sure that we're getting questions answered for people and that these documents make a lot of sense. So it really helps us.
As well, if anyone.
It helps us get eyes on to look at that. So when you're looking at the one that says strong communities don't happen by accident, I think it's the first one in your packet. This is the one that really talks about what the purpose of the millage is, that it's a millage renew and restoration. So the millage was approved in 2016 for 0.3 mils, but it was affected by the Headley rollback. So that meant we collected 0.28 mils, not the full 0.3. So what we're proposing this time is to request a renewal and restoration where we would be able to collect the full 0.3 mils. So this year we collected about $4.9 million in millage revenues with a renew and restoration that does slightly increase the amount that we would collect. This is just a projection that it would raise about 5.7 million. Again, that number it could change a little bit depending on what the equalization department does and how many homes and all that good stuff that there are in the county, but this is a really close estimate. We are proposing again to do a 10-year millage. I can tell you, I can't believe how fast the first 10 years went by, and that we're already here requesting a renewal and restoration. We then talk a little bit about how the millage funds are used. So these do not replace Medicaid funds. We don't use millage to supplant Medicaid funds or state general fund dollars. We're using it to provide essential mental health programming in the community for people who don't fall into those buckets. So we do, with those dollars, work to improve access to mental health information. That is making sure we have information available 24/7. There's a new website that actually will be rolling out, hopefully in the next couple months with Ottawa County specific mental health information that we're really excited about. When you look at the second page, it says the same thing on top when I tell you to look at this. So the second page that actually talks about the current programs. So you'll see the list of the currently funded programs that are operating. We have a group of community connection programs that are providing a variety of things, including social recreation, clubhouse services, drop-in center, community health worker services, some employment services. And then we have one-time millage funding. And this was a request for proposals that Dr. Brashears did last spring, really looking to find more innovative programming for the millage, to look at how we could maybe expand our designated collaborating organizations, the DCOs that Dr. Brashears was talking about earlier. This was a way to try and work towards that. And then we have some programs that are actually funded here at CMH, including our navigator programs, our psychiatric services at the jail, and senior reach. Can I talk about what we've proposed?
Oh, sure, yeah. So. You mean for like next year?
Yeah. So yeah, if the millage passes, what the millage will continue providing essential.
Yeah, so, Dr. Brashears, the millage passes, and I think it's an attachment in
Yeah,
the packet, yeah. You know, the game plan is to do a comprehensive programmatic review of looking at the programs the millage has funded. And I'm sure Dr. Brashears will touch more on that, but you know, our hope is that the millage will pass and we'll be able to provide these amazing services within our community still that we've been able to see the great impact for. I'm also going to pass around this. This is also part of the media kit, if you will. I was having a fight with the printer and couldn't quite figure out which way to put it in. So I figured it out once a couple days ago and I couldn't do it again. So if you want to pass it around, that would be great. Sorry about that. And just so you guys know, these are working documents. So if you see something, you know, typos or anything, we even caught some this morning. So I don't even think the ones in the packet are the most up to date, but we will make sure that everything is good to go before things go to print or out into the community. The other bit, just so you guys are aware, we'll have a millage page on our website where education and information will live and people will be able to go and see, be able to access these materials and be able to see more of that education piece of the programs that the millage supports.
And why this is only coming out now is we really don't want to confuse people because the Board of Commissioners has not approved yet for the ballot question to be on the August 4th ballot. So we really want to make sure that when we're releasing materials, it's really clear that this is approved by the Board of Commissioners. And when we're providing information and education, it's clear to the community why we're doing that. So we felt like it would be a little confusing to have that come out beforehand.
I think it's worthwhile to mention that this is quite distinct from the Friends of CMH group. Stuff that will be developing material because we can't use this material in any campaign. So while we can use some of the statistics and things like that, we certainly are not going to be using county resources to hand out anything. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that. Yeah, all right, let's keep.
Well, that's good to know. So,
Yes.
so where will the different materials be directed then? Like where will you use?
Yeah.
These will go everywhere.
Yeah, these
This
will.
is our information, sorry, Chelsea. This is our information and education effort. So when we're talking to people about the mental health millage, what it's used for, what we've done with it, what the question is, this is the material that we'll be using. So we will solely do information and education, but we will go anywhere that people will listen to us speak. So
And
Dr. Brashears will be very busy this summer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Refresh my memory on like what are the limitations of who can do what when it comes to promoting knowledge?
Yeah, we have a document that we're going to be, it's in the final drafts. We want to make sure everything is right, but we'll be sharing it with staff and here, whoever.
Yeah, we can
needs
share it
to.
with you.
Yeah, but
It really is limited to county employees when they are on the county clock can only provide information and education about the mental health millage. If you're using county devices, you can only provide information and education about the mental health millage. If a staff is on their personal time, on their personal device after work hours, then they can share whatever information they would like about the mental health millage. That is their choice on their personal time. But as an employee during work hours, you are very limited to information and education. So that's why we've had these materials and along with the bifold piece reviewed by corporate counsel to make sure that we're not crossing that line. And if somebody felt like we were getting close, please say something. I mean, we want to do what we're supposed to do, and information and education for us is.
And so with our friends group, we can use the information because we want to factually put out what is the millage, what have it done, what will it be doing? And friends who are in that group can share opinions on how valuable the millage was, either to them personally or to their organization. So that's where the line of, what we want to do moving it forward.
Okay.
Right, like if any CMH employees are out there working with friends, they can't have any of their badges or anything like that on. So I think the staff's been very, very good about setting that limit. That was really, as a matter of fact, we don't even talk. We just keep things very separate, so.
I think we run the risk of being too conservative and not taking advantage of opportunities. For example, information is information, dialogue is dialogue, and your freedom of speech should not be hampered in the process. The real restriction comes on using any agency funds for that effort. So for example, if you go out and speak at a Chamber of Commerce meeting about and supporting the millage, you don't submit a voucher for mileage reimbursement.
April 7th.
Right,
Sorry.
and you wouldn't ask the office to print up a bunch of flyers for you. That would be prohibited. But this is not copyright, right? So if Bob wants to steal some of this stuff.
Yeah, any materials. And
Wait.
Chelsea has also worked a lot with the county to do some more education about the programs that we've had operating. So they've been shooting some video of programs and people who are attending those programs to help educate people more about what these programs are doing out in the community. So,
And some of that is going to be on the website.
yes,
And,
yeah.
and that we can point people to the website,
and on the community mental health Facebook page. So there will be
Yeah.
information shared out there as well.
Yeah, and I think, it's something that I've been calling it like lessons learned, but I think when the millage passes in August or whenever we're on the ballot, I think having an ongoing level of communication to the community of program spotlights and updates. So there's a transparency of knowing where the millage dollars have gone, how they've been used. And, I just don't want anyone to feel like, oh, I didn't know the millage dollars supported that program. So I just want an ongoing level of education and information throughout the year, not just at the end of the year.
I think we really need to highlight more, and we've talked about this a little bit, the impact that this millage has in this community. And I know you quickly were able to look at the bifold piece, but we have touched a lot of lives. And that I think has a big trickle effect that we're really improving the mental health of our community. And that is phenomenal. And we were the first ones to pass a mental health millage in this state. And I think we have done a stellar job of showing, what you can do with local dollars to support the needs in your community.
And I see some folks here that have been supported by millage dollars that have greatly impacted them. So it's nice to see that they come out and support.
And it's a great opportunity in May because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so it'd be a good opportunity for both the friends separately from the staff to be able to be on the radio and
Yeah,
in
April
different
6th,
places,
talk of the town.
stuff like that. So there are good opportunities out
Yeah.
there. Um,
So I had one document related to millage
Yeah.
that I wanted to go through.
yeah, sure.
So we have ongoing millage programs. We had programs that were previously funded. We have all of this stuff. And I wanted to outline to the committee and to the board our plan to deal with. Remember last year we did one-time millage programs with the option to renew. Okay, so I had the opportunity to meet with most of them on Friday and kind of go over this document. And basically, this is what it says. That no matter if you're receiving millage, you've been on a 2-year contract, like our other programs, or a 1-year contract, all of the millage contracts end on September 30th. Okay, and so what I wanted is kind of a big reset out of all of them. Now, we had one-time programs that actually the contracts end at the end of April, right? And so what do? Do we want them to stop services on May 1st, only to maybe get refunded on September 30th or October 1, once the millage passes and we have a new plan? So I met with them and I said, listen, if you have existing millage dollars that you haven't spent, let us know what that is. And we've sent out letters and got that information. And we would allow you to keep using those dollars after May 1st, because these one-time programs would be done on April 30th and keep going. Then I said to the group, please give me a continuation budget of what it would take to continue the service until September 30th. So from May 1st to September 30th, when we're gathering. And we may look at using millage surplus to keep funding those through the rest of this fiscal year. I'm kind of paraphrasing what's in these documents here. And the reason is I'm going to be doing a comprehensive review of all millage programs. I don't care if you've been funded for 10 years or 10 minutes. We're going to do a comprehensive review of all millage programs in September. I think the millage, when it gets passed in August, it's early August, right? I think it's okay. So we'll have that too. To then make recommendations based on a kind of review process we're going to use with criteria of who we want to recommend to the CMH board for a 2-year contract. So instead of these one-time people having the potential for 1 more year, they could get 2 more years. So I'm going to put everybody in equal playing field. I've also sent notice to every millage provider saying all of the contracts end on September 30th, and there's no guarantee that your program is going to be funded past that day. Please tell us your sustainability plan and what your plans are several months ahead of time of what that would mean for you. And you remember last year, this board, when we looked at this, we put in a provision that millage funding could not put at risk that entire organization. Before we renewed any of the millage last year, we said, if millage is pulled, would your whole organization fold? Because remember, people were saying, our whole organization, we're funding one program. We didn't mean to fund complete organizations. And so we got assessments, and we even made some of the millage providers split their budgets in their companies to ensure that's not the case. I'm going to let you know that I'm calling it the Great Reset based on what are the conditions for the next 10 years versus what did we experience the previous 10 years. And so the committee should know that all millage programs will be subject to review and then presented for potential with others millage funding for the next 2 years if the millage gets renewed, when it gets renewed. We even have a contingency if it doesn't get on the ballot until November. Then we would ask the county commissioners to put it in the ballot and we kind of deal with that. So the takeaways are, I want a continuation plan for the current folks to get a couple more months of funding. So we're not having them wind down operations only to renew them if we decide to for the next 2 years. And so this is what this is suggesting. I presented it to the majority of the one-time, calling them one-time funding, because like they were in the middle of the year last year, folks. They have voiced support for it. All of them that were on the call and others have said they've been very thankful for the millage. They don't They don't have a sense of entitlement that it's going to continue forever. They just want to keep doing good works, and we'll be able to show you a lot more of those outcomes as we come through this. But this is what this document is suggesting as principles to renew millage. And the key takeaway is that everybody's going to be reviewed for a 2-year block next year.
And to add to Dr. Bashir's timeline and why he came up with the timeline he has, we collected the last millage tax revenue in December of 2025. So when he says the contracts are ending 9/30, it's because we don't have another collection happening in December if the millage is not renewed. So I think we probably need to
We'll add that in.
clarify that. Yeah. As you were talking, I was like, well, no, a little background on why you're saying this timeline is really important.
And with regard to that timing, if the millage is renewed, we won't see any of that revenue until January, February, March for the winter tax bills starting to be paid, right?
Starts coming in December.
Yeah.
Typically.
For people who pay early.
But yeah, it sort of trickles, yes.
So you have to have enough reserve funds,
Mhm.
and that's why we have a reserve fund
That's
for
right.
the village to carry everybody through until money starts coming in again.
Yeah, exactly right. The other element, real quick before you move on, I apologize, is I think the millage process has gone well. I think we're spending it well. But there has been an impact to one segment of our population where I removed millage, and that was for residential providers. I did not fund millage this year for them. We were hoping on a regional and internal rate increase at the Medicaid level sufficient to cover their cost. That has not happened. And they are suffering. And I am looking to remedy that situation this month and next month to help deal with this issue that I called a residential emergency a year and a half ago, hasn't gone away. We've made significant progress, a lot of accomplishments as a CMH as it relates to the residential system. But the regional process that kind of took over is stalling, and we're out of time. So I'm going to be working creatively this week to help address some of the stabilization needs we have of these providers. And it's not just the major providers. We have general AFCs that I did not fund with residential, with millage dollars that are also suffering. And I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm going to be looking at this process intensely because one of the negative consequences of the principle that I have taken on millage is I've removed millage funding as a residential stabilization factor. And I need to re-examine that as it relates to costs that Medicaid would never pay for and what SSDI and other funding sources can't pay for at the residential level. So I've even asked some of the residential providers to let me know what that is, and I'm going to widen that net. If we don't get a regional path forward to permanently increase the rates where we need on the Medicaid side, I'm going to have to address some of these issues in Ottawa County. And I'm working on a plan to do that doesn't violate my principle of using millage dollars to fund Medicaid services. There's an other side of this that I think that we might be able to provide some assistance and with the state's help deal with this. But I would be remiss, not because they're sitting in here, but I would say it anyways, if I didn't bring this up, that one of the consequences of the approach that I've used with millage is that we still have a destabilization occurring with a lot of our residential providers because the rates haven't been able to increase fast. We've done up to 10% increases and things like that, but it's still not enough to cover the gap. And I intend to address this now and bring it to your attention as a board.
So, question on that. So I know that some of your thoughts on removing that from how we use millage dollars right now was because it was not included in our proposal to the community as a way of using
Right.
millage dollars, so then it wasn't really an appropriate use.
Mhm.
Are you thinking about including it all then in the next millage proposal?
It's my hope to never use millage to supplement residential cost. There are other funding sources like general fund that we might be able to use as a state, that $4 million, that's more appropriate to me than millage. But if we had to do an emergency use of millage for stabilization, it would be a very specific definition and only one time. Because if not, I can't keep kicking the can. The bottom line is the Medicaid rate on one side. But the other problem I've learned, probably more in the last 7 months, there's not enough money on the other side of the residential system, or even other families that are dealing with this outside of residential. The amount of money people get for SSDI and food stamps does not cover the cost of room and board, or for families that are taking care of people. And that gap is actually growing. So I know there are families that are taking care of loved ones that even with that are over 18 in their homes, and they get CLS and they don't get enough money on the other side to pay for their basic needs. And so on April 6th, by the way, I have a meeting with Kristen Morningstar at the state to talk about our top 18 residential expenditures in this issue. I finally got a meeting with the state. I'm collecting my data. I'll send it out. I intend to deal with this head on. I'm just letting this committee, and I'll let the full board know at the end of the week, we're not moving fast enough to address residential rates at the regional level. And I may have to take some action to keep our providers from going under. And I'm figuring out that plan as we speak. But I don't intend permanently to have millage for residential expenditures. I do think we need to get more creative with that money and integrate it into other kind of areas that need our need. Supporting families, supporting general AFCs that get no daily rate from us. You know, we have over 100 people in general AFC homes. They hardly get any support from us. And we took away millage funding from 2 of them because to me, it's like, well, the only 2 getting it. Like everybody should have been eligible. So revamping that, and there are all reasons for that, by the way. That wasn't to say what we did was wrong. It's just that we need a consistent and fair way of doing this. But I'm just bringing it to the attention that my efforts, even though we're valiant, went a long way. We're still not there yet. We need to address this issue, and I'll be coming up with a strategy to do so. That's what I wanted to add to all that.
So something came up in PQI that I think is really important. You mentioned this, Michael, and I think it's a really important distinction to make, that when we contract with someone with millage money, generally they're running our program,
Our program, yes.
right? Like we're not just funding their program.
That's
It's
right.
collaborative.
It's our program they're providing for us.
Exactly. And I think it's important because sometimes like that's a misnomer. And, and then the only other question.
And if we don't want our program to continue, that could be for strategic reasons. It has nothing to do with the provider,
Exactly.
right? And so we're like, yeah, we invested in this for a period now, and that's important. It's our program.
Yes.
In fact, none of the millage went to something that was already existing and like, here's some money. It
Right.
got created.
And then the second thing that I think has been at least talked about, probably not in a detailed level, is the funding mechanism for programs. Like, how do we fund them? Do we give them blocks amount of money? Do we give them per utilization? Things like that. And I don't know where we're at with that.
We have a hybrid of a couple of different models
Okay.
depending on that.
Okay.
Lump sum, or, you know, we're collecting data and paying on based on utilization.
Okay. And the LRE has a meeting tomorrow, so if the residential rate calculator thing is not going well, let me know.
I will. I don't think they'll talk about it much. We ran into an issue that says maybe there are expenditures in our rate calculator that really should be state general fund expenditures.
Okay.
Because providers are saying we need this extra stuff for like continuity of care and wraparound. And what's happening is I have some CMH directors saying we'll only pay for personal care or CLS. We actually don't place anybody. We actually don't, there's nothing that says CMH has to provide residential services. Now in the Medicaid manual, that is true. But I'll just let you know, 1309 of the Mental Health Code is very clear that we are to provide specialized residential services with the state. And I don't care what the Medicaid billing rules say. And so that got me on this. Well, maybe there are certain, I hope people are listening, certain expenditures that providers have that are not on the Medicaid side at all, that really are part of the state's obligation under section 1309 of the Mental Health Code, where it says the state shall pay all specialized residential costs through its CMH system. And so I found this, I'm working with some interpretations on that to fund it, because if you look at the Medicaid guidelines, we're not residential providers. We don't place anybody, we just pay for services. Well, the whole point of CMH was to take people out of institutions. We did that by creating residential homes first and then services for that. So of course, we're supposed to do that, especially look at that. But I think it's more what Medicaid doesn't pay for, general fund should. And that's the discussions I'm having now. You give me $5 million more in general fund, we're not having this conversation. And that's what I'm going after right now. In addition to Medicaid rate increases, because they're not coming quick enough. And I got people saying you can't use that for even the house supervisor. That was last week. Or you have somebody that's doing some clinical wraparound, or even transportation and medical appointments. You can't, there's no transportation code that we can use, right? So it got me thinking, like, all right, we have this obligation. It's not getting quick enough on the Medicaid side. I got to go after the general fund side of things to pay for this, because it's a level of care. And the region's in support of that. So you might get, we're not talking about this month because we're getting some questions answered by Kristen Morningstar on the state, because this has huge implications. I think I'm right. So we'll see.
And that's something that then the individual CMHs would be advocating for with the
Yes.
state and then passing on.
Yes, there are costs that Medicaid don't cover. The state shall cover all specialized residential costs. It says in lieu of this, that, and whatever. When you take it all away, we should be collecting that data and saying this is a general fund cost. Oh, RM ready. We had one provider send me a letter. I had a couple letters this week. One letter says we can't even hire anybody in Ottawa. We can't even get applications for people to get employment in Ottawa County. We can't pay them. Now that's on the Medicaid side, right? I'm like, okay, let's get the rates, but you have the rest of the thing. We have CLS providers, families that can't find people in this county. It's more expensive to do business in Ottawa County.
Are our partners that will are working with you?
Yes, very closely. Mary's Dumas, CEO, has been very, very good understanding this issue and trying to balance a situation that impacts the whole region. But I'm just letting this committee know that we have to act. I can't wait another 6 months, 7 months for the Medicaid and everybody to catch up. I got to figure out how to do this, because we have a whole bunch of folks that for the first time, we have organizations not making their payroll. Okay. And that's like it for a lot of stuff, but that's scary when they're taking care of 30 people.
So I'm back to the millage thing. I'm really glad that you're making it even. 'Cause
Yep.
It's been an issue for me that it's not been an even playing field, that there was a lot of, before you did the one-time thing, there's organizations that never got a chance to
Never got
get
you.
in on that. So I appreciate that. I want to ask you ladies, can you tell me where I can find out about the Ottawa County School Network? Like, what do these schools use that millage stuff
It's no
for?
longer running.
Yeah.
They're
That
not-
program is no longer running.
So
Yeah.
this is like a big X that.
Yeah, that's a formerly funded program.
Okay.
We could get you historical information on what they did.
Okay,
yeah,
that'd be
and the
okay to
support
find
that they
out. I like
provided.
that.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of curious, like, where did they do all that?
Yeah,
So now,
it provided social workers in the schools to
I
provide
remember Lynn
some,
said
yeah,
something,
case
but that's been
management
done?
services.
It's
Yeah,
been
that
done for a
ended.
few
Yeah,
years now.
yeah.
oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So, but we can get
Kaput.
you
Kaput.
historic, yeah, we can get you historical
Okay.
information. While it was running, it was a really successful
Yeah.
program, but the schools received other funding that they were able to
Okay.
provide similar services, so
Okay.
they didn't need the
They didn't
village
get
funds
okay.
anymore.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
And then just to like comment and piggyback on everything you said, like my heart aches for the whole picture. You know, my heart aches for the specialized residential and all of that. But I'm always giving me the voice here of all those parents who are don't get any of that, right?
That's right.
I know all the parents, my son included, bridge card taken away. Like we take care of everything for our son. So I'm the voice also for these parents who get nada.
And that's what, to me,
Right, so
village
that my
needs to
heart
focus
aches
on.
everywhere, and I just want to scream. from
That's
the
right. And my
mountains.
philosophy is millage should be taking care of those needs.
Yeah.
General fund and Medicaid should be taking care of the other.
Yeah,
And that's where I'm moving, is to say, how do we maximize millage to pay for things that no one else will pay for?
Yeah,
in our county that's connected to what you're talking about.
yeah.
And then we'll have the right bucket. I don't want to pit one group against
I
the other.
know,
What
know.
I want to do is say millage is for our community,
Yeah,
and general fund and Medicaid and even CCBHC is for others.
yeah.
And we're gonna get that straight. And that's why we're doing what I call the great reset coming up of let's look at all of this and how it pertains. And there's no guarantee people will get funded
Yeah.
that have been funded
I know,
before.
I know.
I've made that clear.
Yeah, I know.
That this is not like, okay, you got funded once and 20 years
Yeah.
later, you're still getting millage. Millage to me was not intended to be the permanent funding source for programs for long periods of time.
Right, right.
You know, and so we're not going to cut off programs just because they've been getting stuff that we've done, but we're going to take a good look at what are our gap populations to get nothing,
Mm-hmm.
zero right now,
Mm-hmm.
and how do we address that in our county?
It's hard for people to understand that. I
Yeah.
get that unless you are on these committees or on this board
I
or
know.
walk in these shoes, like you just don't know, but my heart aches for the whole thing. I just want to know how to make it better.
Do you feel like that built in then to the village, a structure to be able to do something?
Yeah, I will be we did last year too. We had so much set aside for new programs, so much set aside for kind of like initiatives. Like I intend to present like a tiered funding system, like so much, not huge amount. Maybe it's infrastructure development. Someone expanding their space might be able to increase their access to the community for mental health stuff instead of like has to be ongoing programming. So innovative ways to do that. How can we support families that are in the gap better? And I'm not talking just hand them cash,
Exactly.
but benefits. But the first thing I got to do is stop pitting groups against each other. And that's what I intend to really do, because when we first had the millage, it was because Medicaid collapsed. And it's kind of like in an interesting point now in time. It's collapsing in a different way. But a lot of the original concerns we had in use of the millage have been remedied in other ways.
Sure.
And so now it's kind of look at, well, how do we deal with this now? And that's what we intend to do. But how we used the millage in the past served a purpose. It added a lot of stability, had huge outcomes. We don't want to discontinue them, but I want everything in the right buckets with the right needs being addressed so that a specialized residential person doesn't have to feel like they're taking money from A and this person's taking money from B. Right? It's the same pie. So we got to utilize it better. And we're doing, I think you'll like the process. We'll be very open, very transparent. You'll be able to see what the principles are and how we're making decisions.
I think one of the things that the millage does that separates us from some of the other counties is it allows us to be innovative. It's important for us to still have that ability to not have every penny apportioned and not be able to be innovative in terms of programming. I think it's very, very important for this county to maintain that ability. We've got tremendous staff who have tremendous ideas, and to be able to maintain that ability, I think is very essential. And Donna, thank you very much for bringing up the person out on the street who doesn't understand what we're talking about. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way.
No, not at all.
But it's important that we
Yeah.
kind of keep our,
Yeah.
keep our focus on those folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we move forward. So thank you.
Sure.
And keeping that balance of accountability and innovation. And always for all the programs, the taxpayers need to know how that money has benefited people.
Be
So,
good stewards.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good discussion.
Can I make one comment for Michael? You've probably already thought of this, but I believe in consistency. And if DCH or DHHS is saying that Medicaid dollars cannot be used for house supervisors and specialized residential, then to be consistent, DHHS cannot use Medicaid dollars to pay for any of their levels of supervision internally. And the LRE cannot use any of its Medicaid dollars for supervisory levels. So be consistent.
So noted.
We have a meeting
I'll bring that up
tomorrow,
to
Mike.
Kristen.
We have a meeting tomorrow, Tom.
It's also interesting too that some of those basic functions are also happen in foster care.
Right.
So.
And all I'm telling you is that there is a worldview that you can't use, that we're only supposed to pay for the exact dollar amount of personal care and CLS by a DCW in those settings. Anybody that's worked in those settings know, what are you talking about? There's so much more that goes on there. And if that's the only thing we're supposed to do, then I think we're in violation of 1309 of the Mental Health Code. I think I've said it in public now, what, 5 times this meeting? 1309 of the Mental Health Code, please read it. It's pretty clear. And that's what I intend to use as my basis for, okay, if not that bucket, then what bucket? But it should not be a local community's millage to pay for that. Because there's only what, I don't know, how many millages maybe in the state? Not a lot.
There's 4 mental health.
Right. Yeah, out of 46 CMHs, 42 of them don't have a millage. So what do they do?
Mhm.
Hey,
All right.
and Michael,
What are we on?
we're on the budget deficit reduction plan update.
Yes, that's to tell you at the board meeting, I will be presenting it. Okay, I didn't get time to write up my document that I normally would. So during my director's report, I'll give you a full update of where we're at and the variables associated with our budget deficit reduction. So not ready yet.
Okay.
I had to add this GF thing into it. That's why, okay.
Thank you.
I'm blushing
Makes
again,
that
sorry.
easy.
Yeah.
Old business, I don't think we have any, unless anyone else is aware of any that I'm not. And then we'll move on to new business. Attachment G, and also the summary handout that you picked up here today.
Yeah, and I'll let Bill take this one. I think we have, what, 2 new, and I think we have 5 altogether. I need to step up 1 second. Right back.
So the first bunch are the renewal amendments. And we have 3 of those. Dr. Bashir has created a little summary that hopefully you all got too, so you can, I'll try not to repeat that and give you some new information. The first one is Bear River Health, and that's our recovery, goodness, that's the word, detox program that's up north in the Petoskey area. They're doing some pretty significant changes and renovations to the current location. And they also have a location in Mount Pleasant. So folks, during this time, during the renovation, they'll be going to the Mount Pleasant site. But because we didn't have that in our contract, that location, that's the location change. So that's it with that. No money change or anything like that. The next 2 are PT Solutions, and that's an organization that we contract for OT, PT, and speech. And we have 2 contract renewals with those. And yeah, any questions with those? Those are pretty straightforward, hopefully. And then go a few more pages, and there's a couple of new contracts. The first one is Ride Your Way, and that's an organization that's going to be will provide transportation for folks if they come here for a crisis assessment, and we say, you know, hospitalization is appropriate. The last thing we want to do is say, yeah, you need to drive your car down to Holland Hospital or something like that. We want to provide transportation that will be safe to get the person where they need to be in a safe manner. So we just had 1 provider before, and that was Life EMS. And this will be a second provider to give us more options in case we need it, type of thing. And then the second one is Miller Johnson. And this is our new legal counsel. It will be the new Doug Van Essen for us, for those of you that speak county stuff. So we're beginning that process to get a contract with legal counsel that represent us and not have the conflict with the county and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so he's not the new county counsel. He's our legal counsel for the authority status. He was Neil Marchand. He has the great laugh. You remember?
Yes, loud.
Robin got a kick out.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're still debating the funding source for that because it's a transition cost. He's here to help us with the transition. His firm may be the firm we use ongoing after October 1. So in one packet, at one part of the packet, it says Medicaid, LRE. My summary says to be determined, because we're still figuring out where that is, because we're not using Medicaid funding to pay for any of the transition costs. So I'm working with the administrator on that one.
So will Neil do a lot of work with Vanessa?
Well, what he'll do is in our transition, any contract that the county proposes that we engage with them, like when we're an authority, I want him to look at. And I want him to think of the legal ramifications of certain decisions we make. Is it legal for us to do things or not, or the county to do things? I like the county's person, but it's a conflict of interest to have their person
Sure.
make those decisions. And if we're gonna be an authority, we need our own representation, say that's what's best. And because this firm has done most of these,
That's what, this is kind of his.
yeah, this is
expertise.
right up his,
Sure, sure, sure.
and he's the one that just won the lawsuit against the state on private time. He knows this whole area
Right.
well.
Perfect.
And he has staff too, so like, he himself, he's pretty expensive. So I said, use some of your, but it's very important that we have independent legal
Sure.
counsel during the transition.
Sure.
Is it a 3-year contract? Right?
Um,
Or is it based just on the amount of hours?
well, it's right, it's I don't know if the term, does it say the term 3 years in there?
To be determined.
To be determined. But my goal is, it's really talked, once we become a transition, a new contract, once we become an authority, a new contract will be needed.
Okay.
So we're still trying to figure out, once we get the date from the state saying, oh, you're gonna be an authority in this date, that will populate the end date of this contract with him.
Okay.
But I didn't want to wait
Right.
Yeah.
to have him in place.
One more question on that. So he's working specifically on these transition type things. What happens if you have anything that comes up where there's legal services? So understanding that is you're still using county
Yes.
representation for other things and him for this thing.
Mhm.
But what happens if at some point that seems to be a little bit of a conflict?
It's only a conflict if the scope of work starts to blend. So the county's still gonna do things like FOIAs, appeals, a lot, like looking at our contracts that are current. He's just solely looking at the county's intent to contract with us and looking over those contracts and giving recommendations of how to set up a legal services contract for the future. So we'll be on guard for those potential overlaps, but it's really managing the scope of each's work. And for right now, we're still county department, everything's still the same. But as soon as the county says, we're gonna contract with CMH for X after this date, that's when he gets in and goes, let's take a look at that. Let's look at the retirement plan we have, protecting retirement rights. Is the county doing what it says it's gonna do? Right? They're gonna cover this cost. Does it really say it in there? I know I got fiscal services people that will look at it, but I need to, I'm looking at Diane's account, you bet. But the point is, I'm not expecting too much overlap, but we'll be on guard for potential overlap and conflicts, and then we'll sort those out. I'm not anticipating just because of the scope of what we're having to do right now.
And it's great too, knowing how many other CMH he helped in that process, and he certainly knows kind of the
Yes.
ins and outs of all of that.
He
That
does.
overlap. So I think we're blessed to get him.
Right.
That's a good idea.
He lives in Ottawa County, so he's like, I have to help my own county. You
Well,
done
then
right.
free, right?
Yeah,
Right.
It's just kind of like, what's it called?
it's okay. Nepotism. We need the heavy hitters to make sure we're all set.
I listened to his arguments in the AIDS case.
Yeah.
He's very, very thorough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one more question going back to our renewals. I just wondered, the OTPT, we
Yeah.
increase those rates. Are we still at risk of not getting the people, or has that been resolved now?
Well, it's always a struggle. So we're fortunate that we have enough capacity right now, but it's one person away from being an issue type of thing. So, what tends to happen is we have some staff and they retire in here, then go to work for PT Solutions and then cover. But, even then, those are folks that aren't gonna want to do it forever. So, yeah, it's kind of,
Still, it's better, but
yeah, yeah. So it's not as comfortable as I wish I could be with it.
thank you. Any other questions on the contracts, both the new and renewals that we just discussed? Is there a motion to approve the amended and renewed service contracts that were presented?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, so any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Thank you, that motion carries. And we already reviewed the new ones as well, correct? We just went through all of them, so there aren't any others, attachment H, that's okay, we separate them in the vote, but. So is there a motion to approve the new service contracts? Those were the last two that we just reviewed.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Thank you, that motion carries. And then we'll look at our financial statement, Nick and Diane.
Good. Everyone else take a look at the information at the end of your packet. We'll just do a quick run through of revenues and expenses and where we're sitting currently. 222 revenues, Medicaid, HMP, and autism, all revenues have been received through February 28th. So on track with that. As you can see, we have a current surplus of $19 over budget. SUD grants were only paid through January, so that's where you can see a small deficit there. Other revenue, once again, is third-party billing through insurance and Medicare, which is normally a 90-day delay. So we're a little bit behind on that, but normally catches up by the end of the year. For CCBHC, Medicaid, and HMP, this is the new billing that we're doing directly through MDHHS. These numbers listed are only paid through dates of service February 6, 2026. Jumping down to expenses, payroll, we are $1.2 million underspent. This is attributed to vacancy savings at the office. For client care, we are 1.8 million over. And that is based on the 34% weighted average budget. Administration, this is based on the annual budget and is entered monthly by Fillmore. So it looks over, but that's just because it's entered monthly and not on that weighted scale. And overall, 222 expenses, we are over budget by $997,000. Any questions on the mental health fund? Okay, jumping down to millage, which is the second page. Property taxes, we received $1.1 million in February. Grants, we have October through January received from the state as of this date. And other revenue is interest, which is entered by the county quarterly. So that's where that one lag's a little bit behind. No real expense concerns on the millage side. We are currently underspent from budget $933,000.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any other questions or clarification needed from Nicholas or Diane? All right. Yeah. Is there a motion to receive this financial statement as presented and forward it to the full board for a recommendation?
So moved.
Okay, any other discussion?
Aye.
All in favor? I gave that last discussion opportunity. Now here comes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Your beeper.
Motion carries. Thank you. And now we'll move on to public comment. If there's anyone here who would like to make a comment, please let us know where you're from and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. So you're ready. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. Greg Coyle, Spring Lake Township resident, CEO of the Tri-Cities Family YMCA. As a one-time millage recipient, I wanted to just talk a minute about both being grateful for the opportunity to participate. You're going to hear more about what the Y is doing in your Friday meeting, so I won't kind of steal the thunder there, but there's a lot of good things happening at the Y. I did want to comment on the kind of spending plan or the short-term gap funding plan. And as Dr. Bashir's and staff had indicated, that was presented to all of us last Friday. And it was unanimously affirmed as a good plan. For those of us, especially in the one-time category, who kind of ramped up and have now had really some real strong momentum, being able not to then ramp down, only to ramp back up again, made a lot of sense. So we really appreciate that effort, and we think that the short-term gap funding plan is a big success in terms of us having some stability. So we affirm that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Kyle Thompson. I'm the director of Beacon of Hope, and we are one of the one-time funded organizations this last year. And I just wanted to say thank you. It was a pleasure being here and just hearing the passion around the table for our communities. It's to be a part of the community, to hear that is super special. And you know, Chelsea and Anna putting together strong communities here. They don't happen by accident, and we've gotten the opportunity to be a part of the millage funding, and it's just been a pleasure. And last week, when Dr. Bashir's presented his plan for the basically continuation of care, for a mental health person that's working with clients and things, knowing that there's a plan in place to help with continuity of care is so important. Because if you have a plan put together working with clients, and then all of a sudden the plan has a gap, what do you do with someone for 5 months? Do you just tell them, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can come back in October," and you don't even know if October is even going to be right? So then you have to have a plan as an organization as well. And Dr. Bashir's had asked us to say, "Hey, you know, what is your plan? You know, this funding is not guaranteed." And his leadership has really helped our organizations in the community become stronger. And I just so appreciate that. But this plan of being able to have that gap, that stopgap, it's a no-brainer, really. I mean, it just makes sense to be able to support that. So I just appreciate the opportunity to be here and share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, you're going to have these folks sign up to help you in your presentation, right?
I would like to echo gratitude.
That was the quickest 3 minutes.
It's not working. Just
I am in agreement with the usage of millage funds for things that our community needs that are not otherwise funded, and will acknowledge that that plummeted my spirits a little bit thinking about that. So I'm very encouraged to hear the discussion today. And Donna, I'm in full agreement. I don't want to be pitted against the needs of other members of our community. So I thank you for what feels like an approach that is really working toward unity for the good of everybody in our country.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And just to be clear, if I could ask a question, is it true that we don't need no stinking supervisors in your facility?
Or electricity.
Is there anyone online, Amanda, who would like to make a comment?
No one with their hand raised.
No hands. Okay. Well, I believe it's time that we can adjourn our meeting. So thank you all around the table for your participation. Thank you all for being here to also